Before we begin, we would like to let participants know that if you wish, you may listen to this session in Spanish by clicking on the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen.
Queremos mencionarles que para esta presentación, si así lo desean los participantes, pueden escucharlo en español, presionando el botón que va a estar en sus pantallas inferiores con el símbolo de traducción.
Get loud for me. Get loud for me. Get loud for me. Hands in the crowd, we tearing it down. Heart of a lion, fire inside me, blaze like a siren. Why would you try it? Wake up the beast, no, I can't keep silent. I put my time in, now it's my time, your time is expiring. Blood, sweat, and tears, I conquered my fears, I'm ready to fly now. Get loud for me. Get loud for me. Get loud for me. Hands in the crowd, we tearing it down. Get loud for me. Blood, sweat, and tears, I conquered my fears, I'm ready to fly now. I put my time in, now it's my time, your time is expiring. Blood, sweat, and tears, I conquered my fears, I'm ready to fly now. Get loud for me. Get loud for me. Get loud for me. Hands in the crowd, we tearing it down. Get loud for me.
Greetings, participants. It is now time to begin MUN Impact's very own Global Summit 2.0. We are so thankful that you could join us, and we are excited to welcome this diverse global audience. My name is Nikhil Binu, one of the Co-Deputy Secretary Generals of the plenary sessions, joining you from Qatar. And I'm honored to be a member of the executive team for the summit.
Hi everyone, my name is Ananya. I'm one of the Co-Deputy Secretary Generals of plenary sessions, and I'm joining you from New Delhi, India.
My name is Nata, and I'm joining you from Vizag, India. Normally, us presenters would be looking at your lovely faces, talking to you directly. Though times have changed, we see this virtual world as an opportunity to explore new frontiers in MUN.
First, we would like to emphasize the point that this is a global summit. This means that we have participants from all over the world. And you're participating here as an exemplary global citizen. As such, we require that your interactions with everybody that you meet here, presenters, your fellow participants, and as well as the executive staff, adhere to the highest standards. We will not tolerate rude or disrespectful behavior. Furthermore, seeing as we are a global community and English is not everyone's first language, we request that you be patient with everyone.
In case you face any technical difficulties, have any questions about your schedule and the sessions that you're attending, or any general questions about MUN Impact, our help desk is available to help answer any questions that you might have. A link to that will be dropped in the chat, and you may access it at any point during the summit.
For your convenience as a viewer, we would like to remind all participants that if you would like, you may configure the shape of your viewing screen by clicking on the speaker or the gallery view in the upper right-hand corner. Now that we have finished with the technical explanations, we sincerely hope you enjoy this opportunity. This summit is an excellent way to network with changemakers, make new friends, and gain knowledge and ideas that you can implement in your schools and MUN programs. We want you to be a part of the global solution to address the pressing problems we face across the world today. In early summer, members of the MUN Impact community undertook a special project, a Global Choir 2.0. We are very excited to share the world debut of MUN Impact's Global Choir performing High Hopes by Panic at the Disco. Enjoy.
Mama said, fulfill the prophecy, be something great, go make a legacy.
Manifest destiny, back in the day we wanted everything, wanted everything.
Mama said, learn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams.
Museum victories, back in the day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up.
Always had high, high hopes. Had to have high, high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high, high hopes.
High, high hopes.
Mama said, it's a purple heart to teach children crusaders. Ain't never wanna be.
The wind and the novelties don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything.
Stay up on the rise, stay up on the rise, and never come down. Oh, stay up on the rise, stay up on the rise, and never come down.
Mama said,
Mama said, don't give up now. I'll turn up, we're loved. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. Hey, hey, hey. So I got one more run and it's gonna be a sight to see. Hey, hey, hey. Had to have high, high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high, high hopes. Had to have high, high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high, high hopes. Had to have high, high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high, high hopes. Had to have high, high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high, high hopes.
A huge thank you to Miss Taylor Peets, teacher at John Burroughs High School in St. Louis, for her incredible efforts to put this video together, and to all of our MUN Impact students who contributed to this amazing production. We have shared the video link in the chat for future viewing. Thank you again to everyone who made this incredible performance. Now, I would like to welcome Co-Secretary General Hugh McDowell, who will be presenting some opening remarks.
Welcome, honored participants, presenters, and guests to the MUN Impact Global Summit 2.0. Though we gather today from over 105 countries, we do so as global citizens. We draw creativity and innovation from our diversity and present a worldwide program this weekend. 3 days of inspiring workshops and online activities focused on driving action and impact for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. 5 years ago, the nations of the world set forth onto this path towards achieving the SDGs and a better future. But this is a great challenge. We must first make the majority of the population aware of these issues and how they can get involved. In the time since, we have had a great realization of the opportunities available to us on the internet. Young people today are more technologically literate and benefit greatly from these new resources. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought great hardship on millions of people and endangered the result of years of economic development. Yet it has encouraged innovation, brought people together online, and has allowed hundreds of high school students from almost every time zone to collaborate remotely and plan this event. As we gradually return to full-time education or employment and re-enter the communities, this is a critical time for the SDGs, which are more important now than ever. We must play our part as students, educators, and innovators by getting involved both locally and globally online. At the Global Summit, we are facilitating this through our new interactive SDG Sandbox, where we invite all our participants to plan for the goals within their communities. All of the workshops in this summit have been created by passionate and empowered students and adults to educate, motivate, and drive a constructive conversation. We will show the world that not only will we hope for a better future, we will plan for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. What word comes to mind when you think of the Sustainable Development Goals? During the summit, we will be building a word cloud with the thoughts and phrases that summarize our feelings about the SDGs. Please click on the link that will be dropped in the chat and type in one word that comes to mind when you think of the Sustainable Development Goals. We will share this at the conclusion of the Global Summit on Sunday. We are now very excited to welcome Ms. Anne-Marie Howe. Ms. Howe is the Acting Executive Director of the United Nations Office for Partnerships and the Senior Communications Advisor in the Executive Office of the Secretary General, focused on advocacy and strategic communications for sustainable development. Previously, she served as the Chief of Staff and Director of the Executive Office for the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS. After Ms. Howe's remarks, we will entertain a Q&A, which will be facilitated by MUN Impact's very own Jaideep Singh. Ms. Howe, welcome to the Global Summit 2.0. We are so honored to have you here today. The floor is now yours.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I am really just thrilled to be with everyone today. And wow, that music just really so inspiring and gives me very high hopes. One of my bosses, the Deputy Secretary General, often says to us, we need a symphony where everyone sings together, otherwise we risk a cacophony. And I can tell you definitely this was a symphony. And that's really what the Model UN is really about, is coming together to really think about that wonderful mission of the UN. And on UN Day, I'm just so pleased to be with you around peace, dignity, equality on a healthy planet. And when I woke up this morning, I was really, I'm just going to pull it up on my screen so I can read it to you. I saw the news that there was a ceasefire in Libya. And the Secretary General has really called for that ceasefire all over the world, especially right now during COVID, when we all need to be pulling together to respond and then recover from the pandemic. And so this morning, to be able to read from Stephanie Williams, who is the special representative who's been negotiating with all the different parties in Libya, The parties agreed that all military units and armed groups on the front line shall return to their camps. This shall be accompanied by the departure of all mercenaries and foreign fighters from all Libyan territories, land, air, and sea. That's the kind of work that we can do together. We can look for peace for everyone. And so my one message today is really, how do we get there? And part of it is about being fearless. And to be fearless today, I'm doing something that I would never usually do as Nadabar and others who know me. I'm a big planner. I like to really think about all the different scenarios and different things that could happen and plan them out and think about it, and then work from that sort of safety net, if you will, of having thought through as much as we can ahead of time and to be informed, to have consulted, to have talked with a lot of different people about things. And so today, instead of having a script, which is what I would normally do in a situation like this, I felt like I needed to walk the talk and be fearless, which is to say I've got only 3 or 4 words on a piece of paper, which is really not my style at all. And it's just to really say, we can face our fears and we shouldn't let fear keep us from doing things that we believe in. And what's the worst that could happen today? Well, I could freeze and forget what to say, and I could lose my train of thought. I could be a little bit embarrassed with all of you, but I've also just seen how supportive everyone is in this chat and how your rules of engagement and how you guys approach things. I know that I'm in a safe environment, so I'm going to try this, and I hope everyone else will too. There isn't ever really just the exact right answer, and there isn't exactly the wrong answer, and there's a lot of space in between to explore and to try things, and you can refine and refine as you get going and know what it is that you want your message to be. And so today on UN Day, I've been really thinking also about partnerships, which is I'm the acting executive director for the Office for Partnerships. And what does partnerships really mean? I think there are some old-fashioned views of what partnerships are, which is, you know, I sign something, you sign something, we decide to work together, and you know, we put some milestones out there, and it's a very rigid structure of what a partnership is. And I think in this day and age, partnerships are very fluid, and it's coming together and being able to co-create something, or to take a fantastic idea, maybe do a handoff to another group to say, okay, there's this really great idea. Now we need it to reach so many more people than the group it's reaching now. How can we do that? And who do we need to involve in order to make sure that we're taking that next step forward? Because sometimes partnerships have a sense of just being very closed, and I would love to see partnerships continue to open up, to be really flexible, and to really be very inclusive, and to think always about what is that next step and why do we have this partnership for? We have partnerships because we really want to reach the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, the global goals. Whether it is education, it's climate action, it's gender equality, all of these issues are intertwined and interdependent. And so our partnerships need to be that way too. So as you go through Model UN, as you work together in your lives in and outside of this initiative, I hope you'll think about what it is to work with others now. What is that new definition that you're creating for yourself about what does a partnership really mean? So with that, I'm going to stop and make sure that we have lots of times for questions. And so I will answer all of them as much as I can. And if there are ones I don't have the answers to, I'm happy to follow up. We can continue to talk through this chat. We will also feel free to ping me through Twitter or LinkedIn if you have questions. And just again, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and having a conversation now.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. It's absolutely an honor to have you here today, talk to our delegates at our Global Summit 2.0. And whatever you highlighted on in the limited number of words spoke volumes in itself. So thank you so much for that. And now we will be moving into the Q&A segment. And before that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jaideep Singh, and I'm the Secretary General of the MUN at Home program here at MUN Impact. And I will be the Q&A moderator for the session with Ms. Howe, who joins us from the TSG's office. And before we actually move into the question and answer segment, upon the recommendation by our board member, Mr. Natabara, maybe we could have all our delegates turn on their cameras if that's okay, so Ms. Howe can see where we all are joining from. So if delegates are comfortable, let's have all our cameras on and let's show Ms. Howe how global we actually are.
And please do call me Anne-Marie, and I'd love to see everyone. Thank you.
Wow, wonderful. And yes, if you could drop your chat, drop your country in the chat, that will be great as well. And yeah, Ms. Anne-Marie, I don't have a script either. So. Okay,
wow, so this is awesome. Thank you for turning on your cameras. And I can see I'm like scrolling through page 6 already, and it's amazing.
Great, and you can see on the chat where everyone's joining from. We have Bangladesh, Malaysia, UK, Pakistan, Taiwan, India. I'm joining from Singapore.
Fantastic. I see Switzerland. Up until last year, I'm in New York right now, but I was up until last year, 15 years in Switzerland. Great to see.
Great. All right. So with that wonderful beginning, let's now move into our questions for the day. And the procedure is as follows. We will be looking into the questions which have been brought up on the chat, and I'll call upon the person who asked the question. And please unmute yourself, and or if you'll need permission to unmute yourself, that's fine. Then I'll just ask the questions since we've disabled permissions for unmuting. But yes, what I'll do is I'll ask the question, Anne-Marie, and let's have the answers come in. The first question comes in from Natabara. And Natabara, I think you can unmute yourself. So if you want to go ahead and ask the question, that's fine.
Oh, I already forgot what it was. I think it was, yeah. How do you see the UN's engagement with youth changing, particularly now? And what are your hopes for the future of youth engagement with the UN?
I really see this whole link of intergenerational leadership, which is to say that we are all in this together. And if only certain voices are heard, then we're not going to get the full story or the full solution. And that's going to speak and really resonate with everyone. Increasingly, I'm seeing young people take that leadership role. And it's up to each of us to make sure that whatever table we're at, that we're making space for someone else, someone who's missing. We need to look around that table and see who is not at this table that really has a stake in what we're talking about. And one of the biggest areas I've seen this in is climate action. I would say that the momentum that came from young people on climate action spoke in volumes to everyone. I think anyone who is on social media or was watching the news or was outside could not escape this whole movement that was coming around climate action. And those voices grew and grew and grew. And now you are seeing very much the manifestation of that, which is more and more young climate leaders at the table and making those decisions and helping thinking about policy and what it means for the generations ahead. And in the United Nations, we have the Secretary General now has a youth advisory group, especially on climate. And that climate group is chaired by a young woman from Sudan, and she now joins the larger climate advisory group of the Secretary General made up of experts around the world. And so her voice and the voice of millions and millions of people she represents are going to be heard at the highest levels at every meeting on every issue when it comes to climate. So I would say that all people who need representation, who are missing representation, need to keep being resilient and keep coming back to the table and making sure your voice is heard. And the rest who are privileged to be in a space right now where decisions are made and voices are heard, that you make space for someone else.
Thank you, Natabara, for the question. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for the answer. Let's now move on to some questions from our delegates. So we have one question coming in from Amaya, who joins us from Sri Lanka. So I'm not sure if Amaya can unmute herself. Amaya, do you want to try? Okay, so I'll just ask the question instead. So Amaya asks, don't you think that women have a major role in the process of achieving sustainable development goals, though they may be disregarded in some cultures?
Thank you, Maya. I absolutely believe women leadership is so important. And we have a chance right now with COVID where everything is being turned upside down and everything we think about, we have an opportunity to rebalance in the way and reshape the way that we think. One of the things I've been working on in the last couple of months is something called Women Rise for All. Because we've seen at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic that women leaders were doing really well against this virus. And that leadership wasn't just for women, that leadership was for every single person, and really thinking about what it means to respond and make sure that all the services reach everyone. And so this idea of Women Rise is really about making sure, again, that women are at that decision-making table and they have a voice, and that when we're thinking about policies and what does recovery look like, that we're thinking about women, what women need, but what everyone needs, and so that no one is excluded. We have this opportunity to be much more inclusive in the way we do things and much more really making the space for everyone to have a voice, and that includes women's leadership. I think there is some really great examples of data of when there are women CEOs, they have many times on the whole better outcomes. And I think part of that is that because when women come into leadership, in most cases, and we hope in every case, they are thinking about that inclusive nature. Having been excluded potentially before, they are much more aware and much more trying to make sure all those voices are heard. So we will not reach the SDGs without women leading. We will not reach the SDGs without youth leading. And so I hope everyone continues to be inclusive and bring people into this.
Thank you, Maya, for that question. Unfortunately, it's just been brought to my notice that we have time for only one more question. So I'm going to select one of the good ones I've got, and that's coming in from Avra Abida. I'm not too sure where she's coming from because her name doesn't indicate that, but she asks, how should students work towards achieving sustainable development goals in their communities? And as students and young people, which target should we focus on first?
Well, I think you have to find something that you can really believe in, something that you see missing in your community, in your neighborhood, in the area that you are, in your school, maybe the students and your friends around you. What seems to be missing? I saw in the chat, there's some issues around access to internet. In our more and more connected world, as we face physical distancing and a lot of rethinking of how education is, maybe that digital divide is something that we need to be working on together. And that's where young people can really, one, get the data. Who is and where are people not able to get services? Come up with a plan, figure out who are the stakeholders and people that are affected. We used to have something we say while working on the AIDS epidemic, which is with people living with HIV is nothing about us without us. So that means bringing people in who are most affected and understanding really what the issues are. Then figure out who the decision makers are and who do you need to get these amazing solutions that are either exist or need to be created, and bring those to the attention of who can make the decisions. Maybe that decision maker is you. Maybe you can actually be that entrepreneur. Maybe you can partner with someone who has those ideas and take it to the next level. Think of this as a relay. You don't have to be responsible for every single part, but you do have a responsibility, I think, to get started and to figure out where in that chain that you fit in the best. And so don't worry, you might start off on climate action, you might finish on gender, you might end up doing all 17, but at the end of the day, it's just being fearless and getting started. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And with that, I'll conclude the Q&A segment for this talk. Thank you so much to the delegates who asked the questions. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for your time. And if you'd like to continue the engagement, please follow Anne-Marie on Twitter, or you can connect with her on LinkedIn and other social media. That's all from me. I'll pass it on to the co-DSGs again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaideep, for moderating. And thank you so much, Ms. Howell, for taking time out of your day to speak to our students from around the world. We're truly so, so grateful, and we hope you can visit us again for future events. Again, thank you so much. We are now extremely honored to share a very, very special musical performance with all of you. We are now being joined by Ambi and Bindu Subramaniam, a brother and sister duo from Bangalore, India. Ambi and Bindu are tireless advocates for the SDGs. They're musicians, they're educators, and in addition to that, they've created an exciting 100,000 Deeds for the SDGs campaign, which we will hear more about after the plenary. We hope all of you enjoy their very special performance. Ambi and Bindu, over to you.
Hi, everybody. We're
Hi.
so honored to be here. And it's really exciting to see the amazing stuff that's going on. The song that we want to do for you today is a song that we wrote a couple of years ago when we started the 10,000 Deeds campaign, and it's called Superheroes Without Capes, because we believe that every young person has the power to make a difference in this world. This song is called Superheroes Without Capes.
Superheroes fly away. Let's be real. Who needs a cape? Let's get together and save the day. Pada pada sana sani sani kani. Pada pada sana sani sani kani. Kani don't use plastic, teach some kids. Marvel at the good you did. Don't waste food, compost food. There's so much more that you can do. Pada pada sana sani sani kani. Pada pada sana sani sani kani.
Thank you guys for all the love in the chat. And we look forward to seeing some of you at our session in a little bit.
Bindu, thank you so much for that incredible performance. We are so grateful for you having given your time to grace us with your talents today. And again, we invite all participants to join and Bindu and their session right after the plenary to see how we can all collaborate and contribute to a global 10,000 views campaign during session 4.
We are now extremely honored to introduce today's keynote speaker, Ms. Mary Claire Graf. Ms. Graf is a Swiss-based youth advocate, global change maker, and today's keynote speaker for sustainable development and ambitious climate action. She's one of the 2 youth focal points with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and as such, plays an important role as the voice of youth in ongoing international climate discussions. She has been a passionate climate advocate in such settings as the World Health Assembly, Sustainability in Education by UNESCO, ECOSOC Youth Forum, and the UN Climate Action Summit. At the conclusion of Ms. Graf's remarks, we shall open the floor to questions, and Jaideep Singh, the Secretary General for MUN at Home, will be moderating a Q&A session. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat whilst Ms. Graf is presenting. Ms. Graf, thank you again for sparing your valuable time and being here with us today. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. It's a really privilege and an honor to be here with all of you. And also just quickly to say that I actually started my journey, or a part of my journey was starting with the Model United Nations here in where I live in Basel in Switzerland and in Zurich. So it's always been a very great pleasure to be amongst passionate students also from the Model United Nations. I'm going to share my slides. Let me see if this works. So you should see my slide. Is this correct? Wonderful. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and also listening to my story. I have been asked to talk about myself, so how I got involved, and also was already shared. I have been doing something else than I'm normally doing, so I'm not talking. I talk also about what I'm doing, but also talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I think this is really important, especially to start and get involved. So let's start with the why I'm engaged. And this comes very much from being in nature. I don't know who was already in Switzerland, but you have it probably all over the world. Untouched nature. So we go often to the mountains, and in the mountains you see the effects very, very fast. So you see how the glaciers are melting and declining. You see in winter there is less snow, but you also see it when I for example, do diving. You don't see the fishes anymore. You don't see what you normally see in the movies, where you have like all the coral reefs and all the amazing animals, and then you go and dive, and then you see nothing except some trash. So this was really making me think a lot, and I studied and learned a lot about these different changes. And then later on I realized that the oceans and also the cryosphere is the frozen world, so the glaciers, but also the ice caps are sustaining, and they are really, really existential for our life on Earth. But they're also under pressure, as we all know, and they're changing very fast. And if they are changing, we also have to change. So it's time for action, and we really have to speed up, because the oceans and the cryosphere are also some of our tipping points we have in our system. So it's really crucial that we are protecting them, that they can stay in their balance. So as you can also see here in my background, but also in this picture, this is a visual version of the temperature increase around the world. So on the map you see it in Switzerland, but you can actually have it for all the countries around the world. So you basically see from this side over here, like, yeah. So you see 80-50, and then you see how the temperature increases over the year. And I think the last year over here is 2019. So you see the increase, which brings also our oceans and our cryosphere, so the frozen world, out of balance. And we can not only see this here in Switzerland, but we can see, of course, this all over the world. I think all of you have certain stories and have certain experiences where you saw how nature is changing and the effects of the climate crisis. And this really made me think and made me also very sad and depressed and frustrated, because the facts are all here. Since many, many years, scientists have been warning. There have been a lot of figures. There was a Nobel Prize given to climate scientists and Al Gore. So the science was out there, but somehow people were not realizing that we have to act. And then I saw the beautiful nature declining. I also later on heard how the species are under threat, all the very innocent animals. And yeah, all of this really led to what I'm doing today, and why I'm so passionate and so driven of creating the change with many others together. And since I'm also thinking that we cannot only talk about it, but we really have to also bring this pressure to the streets. I have been with many other people initiating the climate strikes here in Switzerland. You have probably also participated in already some climate strikes around the world. Normally, if it would be like in a room, I would ask like, let's show who has already, like raising hands, who has already been participating in the climate strikes around the world. But I do assume that some of you have been participating. And also, since I am teaching and have to explain this very complex issue around the climate crisis, I try to simplify it and explain what is going on in the world with the human body. So for example, if there's someone you love, it can be someone of your family, your friend, your partner, and then the person is experiencing an increased temperature. It can be 1 degree, and the person is feeling really unwell, out of balance, is feeling really tired. You would maybe already start worrying about it, you know, and then you might go to the doctor because it's just not stopping, and there are already some tipping points within your body, and then the doctor is saying actually it's really, really severe. So the person might experience an irreversible threat due to this temperature rise in the body. And then you start maybe panicking, and the doctor says, yeah, you have to really change something, and he gives you a list what you can actually do. I don't know, but if I would be you, I mean, I would change, and I would take this advice as serious, especially if you ask many, many doctors and all of them are saying the exact same thing. So this was also when I really realized that we have to do something. So the solutions are all out there. And I think so simple messages and trying to humanize the climate crisis and explain it in a very personal story like this makes it really understandable. And I do assume that all of you have a certain experience with nature or with any other encounter, and trying to explain it in such a way can be really powerful. So when I'm telling this in class, all the kids are getting it. So I think you can really use this as an example and hopefully try to convince people. So what I'm doing is very simple, or what I'm aiming for is to save the Earth, or at least humanity and the other animals on this planet, because they are under threat of extinction. Many of them, there is around 1 million, including the human species. So it all doesn't look too good. And that's what is really leading to my engagement. It has already been mentioned in the beginning that I'm active on different platforms. Here you can see some pictures. They're actually from a little bit more than 1 year ago, where I was in New York for the United Nations Climate Action Summit, where all the heads of states came together to pledge actions which are needed to fulfill the Paris Agreement. But of course, not only the heads of state can contribute to this agenda, but every one of us can contribute in our surrounding. So that's why the Secretary General invited from 100 countries, one young climate champion to attend the summit and also bring in their view and how they are interacting. So this pictures came from them, but basically because I saw how nature is changing and I learned about the crucial role the climate is playing in sustaining them, I decided to really put the climate action in my focus. So I did a little agreement with myself that I am taking unprecedented, bold, impactful, positive, meaningful, risky, and ambitious actions to fulfill the SDGs by 2030, and also put a focus on the climate action because it's an underlying SDGs. All of them are absolutely important, but if you're not fixing the climate, none of the others can be achieved. And for this, I started some initiatives, and I was also asked to bring in some concrete examples of what I've been doing. And also there are like many opportunities for you to also be engaged. So for example, we started the Sustainability Week. It's a 1-week momentum we are organizing with students together at the universities to really bring a positive and joyful momentum around sustainability, because we believe, and hopefully also you believe with MUN, that universities are something like a lighthouse of society, and also should really incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals, because many of them, many of these infos are actually coming from the scientists who are then studying and teaching at the university. So we have been starting in Zurich in Switzerland, grew it all over the country, reaching today almost all students around Switzerland. And last year at the Climate Action Summit, we could also launch it internationally. So now all students around the world can be part of the Sustainability Week and try to create this momentum together with a global network. But also, of course, the climate strike, at the moment it's a little bit challenging with the whole COVID situation. Nevertheless, there are many opportunities to engage. I hope that wherever you live, it's allowed and you can go on the streets and protest what we're demanding. I know that not all around the world this is possible, but if possible, this is also a concrete example of what young people can do, build up the pressure, because very often, unfortunately, young people are still not included in decision making. It is getting better, but the time we have to solve the climate crisis is very short. So this is another possibility to get engaged. Also in many places around the world, there are some youth climate organizations. In Switzerland, we have the Swiss Youth for Climate, and this organization gave me the incredible opportunity of taking part in the international climate conferences organized by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in short, the UNFCCC. Probably many of you have already heard about it. Maybe some of you have already joined. I had the privilege of attending twice as a young Swiss climate activist representative, as an observer. As you of course all know, there are the observer and the governments, and very often young people have a way of engaging. This is also done through Yango, the constituency I'm at the moment with my co-focal point from India. We are the liaisons of this organization to the UN and to the UNFCCC, but young people cannot take decisions unless you are taken into a delegation, which is of course not often happening, because they have very small delegations and they pick their people very wise, and are unfortunately not often taking young people into the delegation. Nevertheless, last year around September, I got a call from the Swiss Presidency's office asking if I am accepting the invitation to be part of the official Swiss delegation with a negotiation mandate on climate education and gender-related issues and technology transfer-related issues. And of course, I accept. I was not prepared, because I never in my life negotiated on behalf of a country, of course. And I knew the topic, I was very passionate about the topics, but I really didn't know if this is going to turn out very well. So I put myself into this situation, and it was a wonderful experience. And also now I'm working to support other young people to be able to be part of the delegation, because only if we as young people can get into this position and sit at the tables when the decisions are taken, can negotiate, can deliberate, and bring our view direct into the core of decision making, we can make these changes within the system. There are two ways. So from outside the system, with, for example, these climate strikes or any other strikes, or building up pressure in the media, but we can also change from inside. And I think what is really important, that we do everything possible, so come from the inside and the outside. So currently I'm supporting young people, and also the delegation, because they ultimately take the decision of who will be sitting there and negotiating on behalf of the country. So yeah, I have been I had the pleasure of working with young people all around the world, also especially now through Yango, the official youth constituency, and supporting them to have their own way of engaging and try to make their voice heard. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more challenging, and I will also share afterwards some of the challenges we are facing, but also first, I want to highlight some of the ways we can engage. Of course, we can try to use as many spaces. For example, this was at the press conference at the United Nations in Geneva, where I had the pleasure to talk about the Sustainability Week and the Climate Action Summit. So try to use these spaces, try to proactively engage. I also use the media. We have, especially young people, have a a really great opportunity of using the social media to spread our message. But also there are panel discussions, there are other sessions where very often young people can engage. Sometimes we can't engage, but maybe let's ask and say like, hey, we are young people, we are very passionate, we have been doing some projects, maybe can we present it? So I think there are many opportunities now, more and more opening, as has already been said by Anna-Marie. So these are different ways of young people very concretely can engage, but also the very traditional classical media, so the newspapers, TV shows, radio, or other panels. Let's try to give us and each other young people the voice in the new and the traditional medias, because this is how we are broadening our voice, and this is how we can be taken serious and how our voice really matters. Because I mean, of course, it's great if I'm doing something for myself, but what we need is a global movement and a global drive. And we can only do this if we also get our word spread, as so many other lobby groups are doing. And we also have to get our place. And then another very important point that can be very intimidating and very frustrating, especially in the beginning, is talk to high-level political leaders and decision making. So here you can actually see pictures from all different presidents in Switzerland. We actually have 7 presidents, so not talking about this today, but trying to engage with these people, because they actually sit at these meetings and they have so much influence. And it takes another probably 50 years until we are getting there, because very often, unfortunately, only older people are getting elected. But at the moment, because it's so crucial, we can make our voice heard when we are asking for meetings. Yes, I know it can be very challenging, but very often actually at these meetings, especially at the UN, these high-level political decision makers are there, and sometimes you can just catch them and have a short conversation with them and try to ask for a follow-up meeting. I think this can also be a very powerful tool. And I had the incredible opportunity to also engage, for example, with very right-wing politicians who didn't really care about the climate. But if we find the right angle, for example, through climate finance and sustainable climate finance, or any other topics, we can engage also with these people. But also it's very important to engage with the ones who are polluting the most, and these are the big states, for example, the US. So try to engage with the people who are responsible for the largest, in this case, climate pollution, but can also be in whatever topic you're tackling. Try to also engage with the ones who are most responsible for the mess we are having today, because if they are changing, of course, we have a very big reach. For example, in my case, in the climate fight, it's the US. But also there are many other nations which are equally important in this fight. And yeah, try to engage them, try to make your voice heard, try to propose positive solutions where you're already engaged. Probably you all are driving some solutions wherever you are. So talk about this, because very often these people in these positions, they also are looking for solutions to implement, because they are basically elected to create more sustainable possibilities and implement solutions. Yeah, that's also why I think the United Nations is such an amazing place, because we can at least theoretically meet everyone on the same A level. We can really get in contact and exchange, and yeah, be very honest with ourselves. And that's why I adore, and that's why I'm engaged with the United Nations. Nevertheless, there can be some challenges. Of course, everyone is very enthusiastic, but this shouldn't overshadow that there are challenges, and they can be very hard, especially for young people to engage. And also because I think it's very important for the mental health to talk about certain challenges one can face. So it can happen that one is just turning around in a circle, as we have been doing on this sailing boat. You really don't know how to get out of it. It can also be that you find yourself at the cliff, or yeah, at the very reached mountain, and you don't exactly know, and every path could be that you are just slipping away. It can be that it's very foggy and you really don't see through the clouds, and you really don't see the horizon or in which direction you are going. It can be that you're just super tired and you just don't know how to get up and go further. It can be that you're like dropped in the cold water, in the freezing cold water, and you don't know how to get out of it anymore. it can be that the surrounding and actually the environmental solutions out there are very strong, and sometimes it's not you who change the situation. Sometimes it's about the wind which is changing, the waves which are changing. Maybe you can adjust your sail, your wording, your message a little bit that it's more fitting. But sometimes it's not about you, but maybe it's about the surrounding. And maybe despite it looks so beautiful and you see everything, but you cannot reach your goal. It looks just so far away. But I have been learning also through my journey that there is this gap, as we can also see, act on the gap. The gap stands in the climate negotiation language for gender action plan, also something we have to work on. But there is this gap and we have to act. And I have been putting together some small learnings from my side, and maybe they're helping you as well. So as I'm not flying in Europe, I'm often taking the train. And as when you're normally taking the train, but it can also be a taxi or something else, you're very often know the destination where you're going. So you know about the journey, you're informing yourself. And that's why also I have been learning that with the next 5 tips, it can be really helpful to navigate to this sometimes very challenging United Nations world. So the first thing is about clarity, and the clarity is for everyone very differently. So for me, as I have been mentioning in the beginning, it was a lot about climate, and climate, of course, with all the different related issues. But the climate negotiations are for me in the focus. It can be different for you, but also within the climate, it's a huge field. And again, then we have to narrow it down, because otherwise we very quickly feel overwhelmed, as I've been sharing before. Then it needs commitment from everyone, like going to the conferences, staying engaged, organizing the climate strikes, keeping engaged and committed, despite I've been mentioning before, maybe something is always turning around is really crucial. But having this commitment, and I will also come later on to another point, is really crucial, because it's not going to be a quick fix for most of the topics, despite the solutions would be easy, but it takes a lot of commitment from us, from our community, and from other decision makers to really implement, in my case, climate action, but it can also be other actions to fulfill the SDGs. It needs a lot of competences.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are actually short of time, so we want to keep a few minutes for questions. So if you include it here, that would be great.
I have like 2 more minutes, and then I'm done. Maybe I can go quickly through all the competencies, and then, or can do it in 1 more minute. Okay.
Actually, we really are short of time. I'm
okay. Okay, sure. Then we can move to the Q&A.
Thank you for your understanding. Yes. So thank you, Graf, for that very detailed presentation, and we are all really inspired by your journey. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we have only 1 question which we can take. And I'm going to take that question from Isa, who joins us from Kuwait. And Isa asks, could you please share your thoughts on the complacence of our world leaders and what change needs to occur to shift the current political apathy towards climate change?
So I think what we as young people can do is really show that there are solutions that we implement, and we don't have to wait until they are taking action. We can take the actions ourselves, we can start, but at one point we also have to get political, because it cannot be that a sustainable lifestyle is more expensive, is harder to achieve. So what is needed is that young people are just going and starting and being fearless, as you've already been heard, and going out there and implementing their solutions. But then that we also get political and have to demand and stay committed, as I've been mentioned, and search their allies to make these political commitments happen. But the first is really start whatever you're passionate about.
Thank you, Ms. Graf, and thank you, Isa, for that question. With that, we'll conclude this segment of the Q&A and Ms. Graf's amazing and enlightening talk. Thank you, Ms. Graf, for your time. And unfortunately, sorry for cutting you off, but we're really, really short of time as well. So I'd like to hand it over to our co-DSGs to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Ms. Graf, we apologize for interrupting you, and thank you so much for taking time and speaking with our delegates. We have shared a number of links in our chat, and we are sure that there are members of our audience who would love to support your important work on climate action. Thank you again for your time. I am now pleased to present Sara Montes, the Co-Secretary General for the Latin America Division of the Global Summit 2.0.
Apreciados participantes a la Cumbre Mundial 2.0. Antes de nada, me complacería empezar mencionando una simple frase célebre, la cual he tomado protagonismo dentro de mí, la he interiorizado y escuchado y hecho parte de mi vida. De este modo, me permitiré citar al 32º presidente de los Estados Unidos, Franklin Roosevelt, el cual mencionó: no siempre podremos construir jóvenes para el futuro para jóvenes, pero podemos construir jóvenes para el futuro. ¿Por qué empiezo mencionando esto? Pues bien, creo que todos estarán de acuerdo conmigo al decir que al menos una vez en nuestras vidas escuchamos la paradoja de que los jóvenes no debemos entrometernos en estos asuntos. Sin embargo, y más que nunca, yo tengo el ferviente pensamiento de que los jóvenes somos la comunidad del cambio, que el hacer brillar el mundo está en nuestras manos. Quería empezar mis palabras con esto, pues me llena de orgullo decir: hoy estamos construyendo todos juntos un cambio. Desde nuestros trainers, speakers, panelistas, leadership team, executive team, voluntarios, ustedes participantes y nuestra comunidad, todos juntos somos el cambio, una esperanza para el mundo. A lo largo de muchos meses de arduo trabajo, toda la comunidad MUN Impact ha trabajado sin cesar, buscando el crear un balance y un espacio fructífero donde los ODS sean los protagonistas de un sinfín de conferencias orientados hacia la Agenda 2030. Ahora podemos decir que el día tan esperado ha llegado, la Cumbre 2.0 ha llegado. Ponemos todo nuestro esfuerzo en la mesa para que ustedes, queridos invitados, gocen de esta actividad, motívense e inspírense a creer que juntos seremos quienes hagan de este mundo uno mejor. Ingresen a cuanto workshop les interese y disfruten al máximo las ponencias de cada uno de los presentadores que han preparado con amor para ustedes. Sean parte de nuestras demás actividades que se llevarán a cabo durante estos 3 días. Ingresen al Sandbox y al Dolphin Pool, pero más importante aún, crezcamos juntos, para así mantenernos juntos e impactar el mundo juntos. Yo tengo fe en que cada uno de ustedes serán los hombres y mujeres pertinentes para nuestro contexto global, pilares de una correcta sociedad. Yo tengo fe en los jóvenes y tengo aún fe en nuestro planeta. Es hora de hacer nuestras visiones posibles. Es hora de juntos con nuestra pasión estar en la búsqueda de un mejor mundo. Este es el camino a un mejor mundo. Sin más agregar, me emociona poder decir bienvenidos todos a la Cumbre Mundial 2.0. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, sir.